IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Hope you're all well and keeping safe. On the podcast today, we speak with a returning guest, Prasenjit Sharma from Kamakya Walks. Prasenjit also runs another travel company called 6 Degree Adventures, which does a variety of adventure tours across the northeastern part of the country. On the episode today, he speaks about the walking tour of Nagaland, exploring the various villages and the tribes of the region. So let's hop onto the episode and find out more about Nagaland. So with that introduction, we'd love to welcome back, I should say, Prasenjit Sharma from Kamakya Walks and 6 Degree Adventures. Prasenjit, thank you so much for being on the Musafir Stories and welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Sept. Thanks for having me back on your podcast. It was really nice speaking about Kamakya Walks last time. And this time I look forward to talking about some of our other trips that we run through 6 Degree Adventures.
Indeed, it's our pleasure to have you back, Prasenjit. And for listeners who are listening to Prasenjit for the first time, I'd certainly recommend that you go check out the other episode we did on Guwahati and the Kamakya temple. It was really a riveting experience and a spiritual journey of sorts we did with Prasenjit. But Prasenjit, for first-time listeners, why don't you speak a little bit more about yourself and your two initiatives with Kamakya Walks and 6 Degree Adventures?
Sept. So basically, I run two travel companies. One is 6 Degree Adventures. And after that, I launched Kamakya Walks. So the last time I was on your podcast, we spoke in depth about Kamakya Walks. But just to give you a brief idea, Kamakya Walks run heritage stores in and around Guwahati, with the main focus being around the Kamakya temple complex. So we go into the history, culture, architecture, sculptures, and so on. We showcase the different temples in this place called Nilachal Hill. The idea behind the walking tour is that you visit some of the places that normal visitors to Kamakya don't actually go and see. So we talk about the origin stories and we want to create a different kind of activity for travelers coming to Guwahati. And this is basically, I felt the need for a walking tour in Guwahati because there was nothing that not many people were doing walking tours. And I felt Kamakya was the right place to start because it's got a lot of historical and spiritual significance.
Yeah, indeed. Some much needed attention and focus on Guwahati as well. Like Prasenjit mentioned, there's not too many walks, especially those highlighting the spiritual significance of Guwahati. So really, really glad to have covered that. But Prasenjit, today we have you more in, I guess the focus is more on your role as founder of 6 Degree Adventures, which also does a lot of fun things, right? So do you want to speak a little bit about 6 Degree Adventures and what you do with them?
Yeah, sure. So 6 Degree Adventures, let me just tell you why I've named it 6 Degrees, is there's a concept called 6 Degrees of Separation. So you and anyone else in the world are separated by 6 people. And the reason behind my company being called 6 Degree Adventures is we wanted to create meaningful connections between people through travel. So I started 6 Degrees in 2017. We have been basically doing cultural tours, wildlife tours, motorcycle tours around Northeast India. We operate in all the 7 sisters, including Sikkim as well. And we try to actually give a different kind of experience to our guests. We kind of ensure that the local community gets benefited by tourism. So the topic that we'll be talking about is Nagaland on Foot today. And Nagaland on Foot is basically a sustainable tour that we run in Nagaland, where we have developed the homestays with me and a local partner of ours. His name is Keviji. We take people to remote villages in Nagaland so that they see certain things that normal travelers to Nagaland do not see. And we run wildlife tours because Northeast is very rich in biodiversity. So we do wildlife tours in Kaziranga, Manas, Nameri, and so on. And then my personal passion, I'm very passionate about motorcycling. And Northeast has some really beautiful places. So we are running motorcycle tours to Tawang, other parts of Arunachal, Nagaland, Assam, and so on.
Wonderful. That's definitely an array of different types of adventure experiences that the company organizes. And yeah, really excited to be talking about Nagaland today as well. I know Nagaland, like you mentioned, is really a cultural melting pot with so much diversity, not just in terms of the flora and the fauna, but also in terms of the people there, right? So many different tribes, their traditions, their cultures, etc. And what I'm even more keenly excited to be talking to about today is this is almost like rural tourism, right? We are actually taking the focus away from the more mainstream things that Nagaland might be known for, like the Hornbill Festival, which is obviously the flagship festival of Nagaland. So we're moving a little bit away from them and covering more of these local villages, their way of life, what people do for a living, their cultures, traditions, and all of that. So really excited about that. Do you want to give a quick overview of the trip itself, when this is done, and the length of the itinerary, Prasenjit, before we get started? Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason why we started this Nagaland on foot is so that when people generally visit the Hornbill Festival, it's like like a cultural amusement park. So there you get to see the traditional houses and people dressed in the local attire, but this is in one area. But you do not get to know the background of how their villages look and what is their day to day, how do they live day to day and so on. So our idea was to take people into these villages, let them stay in the homestay. I feel homestays are the best places where you can actually learn a lot about the people. You can see the way of life, you can take part in their day-to-day activities, and this gives a very good experience to our guests. So this is basically a walking holiday. I came up with this concept. Is This walking holidays is very popular with certain kind of people. And so I was looking for a place where we can start this walking holidays in Northeast. And Nagaland is I found was very ideal because the distances between certain villages are not that big. And before the motorable roads were built, the local people used to take these hiking paths or these paths through paddy fields and so on, and they used to walk from one village to the other. Once the motorable roads have been built, the people use these paths less, but they're still very beautiful. Goes through some, wild, like a forest, a wildlife sanctuary, and so on, and goes through paddy fields, terrace farming. You get to see a different side of Nagaland.
Sure.
So Kevi and myself, we discussed about how we can come about with this itinerary. We've selected the villages. We've taken part in. We've given the homestays feedback on how to, take care of a guest. We've seen the basic infrastructure that is good. Should be good enough for our guests. So we have developed this, and we've been running this store. This is the second year that we're running this store. Right now, due to the rains, we cannot run the store because the paths get very muddy. There are certain problems like leeches.
Yeah.
So from September onwards, we will be running these stores again.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good segue just to set a little bit of context about how often a year or like what period of the year do these trips usually run for, and how long are they for?
Yeah, so this trip we run it from September to March, and the duration of this trip is basically 8 days. We keep the group sizes small because it is easier for the homestays to take care of the guest, and also we like to have like an intimate, intimate interaction with our guests. So when you have a very big group, it causes undue pressure for the homestays to cater for food and so on.
Yeah.
And when you have a smaller group, everybody it takes part in it more actively. So we
Yeah.
keep the group sizes to maximum 8 people.
Yeah, I think that certainly does make sense. And also, just to clarify, right, in terms of needs for permits and stuff like that, is there any requirement for Nagaland, or is this for some of the other, primarily for some of the other northeastern states, like the inner line permit, basically?
Nagaland requires an inner line permit. We take care of all the permits and everything. It is You can make your inner line permit online as well, but then you have to give a reference of a local person. So once the clients confirm with us, we take care of all the permits and bookings and so on.
Okay, wonderful. I think that's some good context sharing about the trip size, as well as any prior requirements that one may need. And it's great that the company is actually taking care of all of these things, and you don't have to go through any hassles last minute. Yeah, let's just jump into the trip and the itinerary itself. Prasenjit, why don't you tell us a little bit about or where the journey kicks off from, and how do you like get there? What's the starting point of this trip?
Sure, sir. So the trip starts and ends in Dimapur. So we have selected Dimapur as a starting and ending point because of the connectivity. So you have an airport in Dimapur. You also have the Rajdhani and other trains. Dimapur is well connected by the railway network, and you can also there's good road transportation. So we start and end the trip in Dimapur, and from Dimapur we throughout the trip we have a backup vehicle. So the vehicle carries the main bags and all that from one village to the next. So once we start the trip, we basically pick up our guests from Dimapur, and then we drive them to a certain place from which you have to hike to a village called Kirufema. uh, just to give you an idea, that throughout this trip, we have designed the trip in such a way that it is you don't have to be an expert hiker or a trekker to do this trip. People with good like general fitness levels, can do this trip. On a day-to-day basis, you'll be trekking for about 3 to 4 hours, and we take care of everything. So your bags are in a vehicle, are basically traveling with a small day pack with your essentials like medicine, sunscreen, and so on. And you don't have to, from the day you arrive to the day you leave, all your meals and everything are included. So once you start from Dimapur, you take about a short drive, and then you start hiking. And you go up to this village called Kirufima. You're kind of opposite to Kohima. So you can see Kohima in a distance from this village. We have a small homestay, but very beautiful homestays overlooking paddy fields and so on. You get to this village, you speak to the locals, you try their food and so on. So you are basically hiking. So every day you do have on one of our trips, there was a girl who was not feeling well. So she did most of the trip in the car, whereas the rest of the group was hiking every day.
Okay, so yeah, that way a lot of, I mean, still, like I said, it's still manageable by a person with average fitness levels, but still there is a lot of walking around doing on this trip, right? So you're not necessarily
Yes.
commuting by car to the most part. And now, in terms of Kirufima, anything unique or any experience that focuses on during your stay here in the village? And also, you said, is this basically the night you spend after hiking up to the village? You spend the night there and then move on to the next spot, right?
Yeah, so this the reason I've taken Kirufema is basically like the base camp, you know. So what we ask our guests to arrive in Dimapur around lunchtime. So by the time you reach Kirufema, it turns dark. You may just get to see the sunset. So this is just the first village. From this, there are different tracks that go to the other villages. That is why we have selected Kirufema as the first stop. But
Okay.
generally, when you start, it's an uphill hike to Kirofima, but then it takes about 2 hours to get to this village. And once you get there, you basically get familiar with your group, because that's the first night with the group.
Sure.
So you have a small bonfire. You know, they'll serve you tea. You can see the food being prepared, the local food being prepared in the kitchen. So in all these villages that you go, or in the Northeast in general, the kitchen is the heart of the whole, household. So there's a bonfire that'll be going on. You can see, you can ask questions. You can please see if go feed the pigs if you want. So it's just it. I would say that this itinerary or this trip is not something that you will be ticking off. Like
Places to
things to
see.
do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, things to do or places to see. It is just that you will be staying in these actual authentic villages. So in one of the villages, I got the chance to sleep on a coffin bed. Okay,
Very interesting.
uh, so during when the person is alive, you are sleeping on a bed. Once you die, the bed is turned upside down, and you are placed inside the bed, and you're buried. So these are something that you will never actually see anywhere else. So these are the kind of experiences that you will get around this trip.
Yeah, some really unique and yeah, really first time I'm hearing of something as a coffin bed. So definitely, yeah, let's chat a little bit more. So yeah, let's say the first day was, like you said, from Dimapur to Kirifama, the opportunity to bond together and also get a first sense of the village life and what's going on in terms of the structure of the villages, how the kitchens are the communal space. That's where the heart of the house is, and a lot of the activity goes on, etc. After you've spent the night here, how's the day for the following day looking like? Is there more time spent in and around Kirifama, or we head off to the next village?
So in the morning, you will be basically heading off to the next village. The next village is called Konoma. So Konoma is Asia's first green village, and it's a stunning place. You have you have actually these terrace fields. They practice something called shifting cultivation. Okay, so I'll explain about shifting cultivation later. But Konoma, the people of Konoma used to be hunters, and now they have become conservationists. And there's a bird called the tragopan. So they have a tragopan sanctuary also in Konoma. When you start the day, you after your breakfast and all of that, you hop onto the vehicle for a short while, and then you start trekking. The second day trek is basically that is one of the most challenging days of your trip. Is you have to go like uphill for quite a long time. Then you get to this small village where you have tea and so on, and then you carry on to Konoma. When you're reaching Konoma, you have to basically go through this wildlife sanctuary. Our local guides will talk about the local flora and fauna, how they use certain plants for medicinal purposes, how they cured instead of going to a doctor. The knowledge about the plants and all, they'll explain that. Then they will, when you are about to reach Konoma, you'll be walking through the paddy fields. So then they will talk about, how they do agriculture, and you can also take part in maybe plowing a field. So last time when we were there, there was this old lady plowing a field, and our group basically took turns to plow her fields. Then once you're in Konoma, we have a lovely homestay overlooking the entire town and the village. And here you basically go for a village walk. So you go for a village walk where the guide will take you to the morongs. So morongs are the old houses and the community halls of the in the villages. And then they will talk about certain things like age groups. So age group is something that is practiced in these villages, where young children will young children of a certain age, they will form a particular group, and this group does a lot of community service, and they support each other. uh, so suppose I'll give you an example. So suppose there's a festival or something, and a person wants a traditional garment. He will ask people from his age group to weave this garment for him. Likewise, when suppose this other person's house is in needs repair, so this entire age group will get together and help him repair the house. So it is a very close knit community because of things like age group. So when you're on the tour, we'll take you to the morongs where you will see how the community interacts with each other, and then they will talk about the history of the place. So Konoma also has a fort. So this fort was used by the local people to fight against the British. Uh, so we basically go for village walks where you will see the fort. You will talk about the history. You will talk about the people. When the winters come, there are a lot of festivals that are happening in and around the Hornbill Festival time, but not in the main Hornbill Festival venue, but in these villages. So the last time we were there, we witnessed the stone pulling ceremony. So the stone pulling ceremony is there's a huge rock, one solid piece of stone which weighs some 10, 15 tons, and the different tribe get together and they pull this piece of stone up through the village. Okay, so these are it just shows you how the community works together in these places.
Yeah.
And when the stone pulling ceremony is going on, then all the people are in their traditional clothes, and it's like a photographer's heaven. So the what do you call, the traditional costume, they will they will sing and dance. And one of the interesting thing is that anyone who visits this festival, the stone pouring ceremony, uh, the entire village will get together and serve free food. So they will have different kitchens in different places of the village, and you can just go to any place and they will serve you traditional meat stews and rice and all of that. And the whole community gets together and serves and cooks, and you can see them cooking in the community kitchen, and then free food is served to anyone who visits. So these kind of things you do not get to see in many places, but the Northeast and Nagaland especially is quite rich in these things.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, like how many really important, and unique things you touched upon, right? Let's kind of go back to a couple of them, at least you mentioned, right? One is the Green Village, right? And Asia's first green village you mentioned.
Yeah.
Can you just shed some light on that? Like, what exactly that is and why it's called so?
The reason why it's called Asia's first green village is basically they are from hunters, they became conservationists. So they are basically protecting the wildlife and all the jungles in the place. So they make sure that trees are not being cut and what there's no hunting taking place. They have surrendered all the weapons. So that is one of the reasons why it's called a green village. Second thing is that they're very one of the things I'll tell you is when we were doing these trips, you'll be surprised at how clean these villages are. So they're very careful about the use of plastics. They're very strict about no smoking, no tobacco. Everything is, when you're eating, like when I was talking about this festival, when you eat food and all, they'll be basically giving it to you on leaves. So everything is biodegradable. They have taken like conscious efforts to make sure that the place is not polluted and so on. And also the village has got together and has formed like a ecotourism society. So ecotourism and the homestay thing. So the bookings for homestays go through this body. So everybody in the village gets enough business to sustain their business.
Yeah.
And you also have to take a local guide when you go to these places. So the local guide ensures that you are respectful and you're not doing anything wrong in these places. So this is why it has been called a green village.
Yeah, I think really something that's really commendable, right? And the way they've done it, and especially to make this change from being hunting focused tribe or community to a one that has moved towards more sustainable ways, and even this central body that you said that ensures that locals are involved, but it just ensures that things just don't become commercial, and at the same time they're still able to conserve and preserve their like the heritage and the culture of the place. So really commendable, and I'm glad that you and the group got to experience some of these. And similarly with the morangs, right? Like you mentioned, the almost like the community centers where these almost, I mean, primarily for young boys to
Yes.
be there, spend some time, learn from the adults. Previously, I believe this used to go back to learning even the ways of hunting and all of that, but now
Yes.
it's more focused on community skills, the heritage, the history of the place, and also about the local, let's say, craftsmanship, right? Blacksmithing or woodworks, and I believe the baskets from this area, Kanoma, are also very popular. They're known as the kofis,
Yes.
right?
So the intricacy in weaving is
Yeah,
amazing. You see these baskets, and they go. If you have to buy them, they really are very expensive. But again, coming back to the Morong, see, these tribes were basically warrior tribes.
yeah,
Okay. And most of the traditions have been passed on orally. So the Morong is the place where they would train and they would talk about strategy and they would talk about how to fight and exercise. And it's like you can call it a hostel come a
yeah,
gym come a workshop.
yeah.
So
Yeah, some very interesting and unique concepts of this part of the country, and thank you for sharing all of those. Now, having spent some time there, so Konoma is definitely longer than Kirifama, right? The previous pit stop. How much time exactly do you spend here,
So we
Prasenjit?
spent 2 nights in Konoma,
Okay.
and the second day in Konoma, you basically take a walk through the village. After that, you go trekking into the forest. So, Konoma, you will find this tree called the alder trees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so alder trees uh, are planted and they are kept at a certain height. And the reason why they plant the alder trees is basically the alder trees are very good for putting nitrogen back into the soil. And now talking about the shifting cultivation, so what happens is the village will decide that for the next 5 years, one particular patch of land will be cultivated, whereas the rest of the area that is where agriculture can take place, that will be left under forest cover. So naturally, the nitrogen and all the minerals and all that for those 5 6 years are getting put back into the soil. So you don't have to use that much fertilizer or put in other chemicals to make the soil rich. So for these 5 years they'll be cultivating here. For the next 5 years they will shift to another place and cultivate there and let like a natural forest grow in this land that was cultivated earlier. In the second day you're basically learning about agricultural practices, and then the guide along with the guide you will be basically picking up some sweet potatoes or some peas, or you'll basically pluck fruits and vegetables that you will go and cook in when you have a picnic lunch. So there's a beautiful stream and place, so you go there, you'll start a fire and you'll cook your own food and all that. So these are the kind of activities that we create for our guests. Then you go have a picnic lunch, then you again come back. By the time you hike and have lunch and come back, it almost turns dark. uh, so then you come back to the village, have a cup of tea. Then you can take part. Like when we were there, half the group was making chutney, the other half was helping the lady of the house, cook certain food or asking her questions. The other half was helping feed the pigs, or playing with the kids and so on. So the whole group takes their own initiative and starts doing things around the house. So this is very kind of experiential tourism, if you would like to call it. So you are taking part and learning, and you can become friends with your group and also with the people living in the house.
Yeah, for sure. And also, quickly touching upon this shifting cultivation, right? It's also referred to locally, I think, as jhum cultivation,
Jhum
right?
cultivation.
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
I think there has been, I would say, it has been a point of contention in the past, right? With modern, uh, let's say, agriculturalists or scientists saying that this is not a very sustainable way of doing it. Whereas, like you mentioned, there are certainly points that do work, but it is the slash and burn type of cultivation where you cultivate it for some time and then allow the land to recover and then move to the next patch. There's certainly been some to and fro, but like you mentioned, obviously from the villagers' point of view, this is something that has been going on from the past, and they also see benefits of why they're doing things a certain way. So hopefully,
Yeah, but on
longer
the
term.
on the other side, when we were in these villages, when we were doing this, when we were learning about the agricultural practices, the local villagers were telling us that a lot of foreigners from different universities had come to learn the shifting cultivation and the benefits, study this thing, and see what are the benefits. Actually, they found it more beneficial than other modern practices of farming.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, even the use of harmful pesticides and chemicals and stuff like that, that is trying to be curtailed too. So yeah, hopefully there is a conclusion that works out for everybody here, right? So thank you for mentioning the jhum cultivation as well. That is the traditional way of farming, in especially in the northeastern parts of the country, right? So that, and tell us a little bit about. I know one of the things or points of concern might be the food also, right? In the northeastern part of the country, and especially for somebody who's vegetarian, is this manageable and stuff like that? Was that ever a challenge, or is this merely a preconceived notion that most people tend to have? Although, like, obviously the non-vegetarian food is popular amongst the locals, but let's say for somebody who is vegetarian, how easy or difficult can this trip be?
So we had this question being asked quite a few times, that because certain kinds of meat are popular in Nagaland, and they have seen videos of dog meat and so on. But so that's why they are a bit skeptical. But on these stores, it's I would say a very good experience for the vegetarians, because there is always your traditional dal, chawal, sabji, and all of that, and meat is an extra. So you'll have means lot of variety for vegetarians, and it is all organic, local. So it's very healthy, and there hasn't been any issue with vegetarians. Of course, some people are because aging, like smoking meat is part of the culture. Okay, so as I told you, where the kitchen area, where the it gets pretty cold, and also everybody sits around the fire, and there above the fire you will see the pork or beef and all being smoked. Okay, so some people get a bit put off or turned off by seeing the meat. But then the thing is that when these homestays, they know that people are have they're very careful about separating the meat and the vegetables, so they'll not be cooking it in the same dish and all. So we haven't had any issues.
Okay.
But of course you will get to see meat being sold and smoked meat and so on. So
Yeah, definitely a traditional way of slow cooking, right? Basically, it
yes,
cooks for a long time above the
a lot of
fire.
flavor. And,
Yeah, exactly. So certainly something to be experienced while you're there. Specialty, and I think pork is very, very popular in this part of the country also, right? Especially in the northeast, pork and
Yes.
other things like sticky rice, puffed rice, or rice beer. Like all of those are very, very
So
popular.
the rice beer in Nagaland is called Zutho. So you have to let the people know a bit. Means to arrange Zutho, you have to give someone prior notice. Then they can keep it for you and
Yeah,
ferment it. But the rice beer is very popular,
yeah.
and Nagaland is a dry state, so you don't have like local alcohol shops. So people generally drink this rice beer.
Yeah, very interesting. And I believe the tribe is, at least in this part of the country, like I think obviously if you're in the Hornbill Festival, you get to see tribes. There are overall 16 major tribes in Nagaland that come together for the Hornbill Festival. But I believe in this part, right, in Konoma, it's the Angami tribes, or
Yes,
Angami, I don't know if I'm
yes, the
pronouncing.
Angami tribe.
Yeah, okay. Angami
Yeah,
tribes, right? They're the ones
yeah.
in this area. So you'll get to see that. And Tribes of Nagaland is another episode or another series, perhaps, right? They're so intricate just in terms of their ways of life, their practices, right from their clothes to their headgear to their food to their even rice beer, right? I mean, different tribes might have different types of rice beer and cooking and all of that. And yeah, each tribe has their own uniqueness and specialty. So if somebody's interested, you could definitely look up and read into it. But yeah, thank you for covering that off too. Now, Konoma, yeah, does seem one of the spots where you spend a bit longer. Where do you move on from Konoma, Prasenjit?
From Konoma, you go to a nearby village called Zuleki, and Zuleki is a very beautiful place with these natural streams, and again the alder trees are quite abundant there. But here also you have a fishery, so they are trying to cultivate, grow trout as such, populate these streams with trouts and all. So this is a close by village to Konoma. It's not a very long walk. It is about 15 or 18 kilometers. It's basically like, though you're going to different villages, but throughout the trip you will actually get to see two tribes. So till Zuleki you are in the Angami belt. Okay, and from Angami you move on and you see the different tribe, which is the Zeling tribe. So in the throughout this trip, this area you get to see two different tribes.
Okay.
Right, it's not possible to cover the 16 tribes or something, because it's
Sure.
spread across all of Nagaland. But we are trying to showcase two tribes in this trip.
Okay. And I also believe like the hottest chili, I don't know, in the world or in India, but Bhut Jolokia is popular in this part of the, like in this part of Nagaland, I believe, right?
Yes,
I
so
don't
the
know if
Bhut Jolokia,
yeah,
that's what the Assamese call it,
yeah.
and the Naga people actually call it the king chili or the Raja Mircha.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the hottest. It is one of the hottest chilies in the world,
Yeah.
and they again dry it. So there are different ways they use it. They make chutneys out of it, or they dry it and put it in different curries. So uh, Naga people actually do eat a lot of spicy food, and so one of the popular dishes is bamboo shoot with pork and king chili, which is amazing to the flavor. It's all very what do you call? I don't know the word for it, but it's basically very earthy. Yeah, so very earthy tasting food.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, if somebody is up for the challenge, you could try out the hottest chili or one of the hottest chilies in the world, Bhut Jolokia, known in some parts of the country. And like Prasenjit mentioned in this part, it's referred to as the Raja Mircha, right? Or King Chili.
Yeah,
But yeah, and you also quickly touched upon the trouts, right? Rainbow trouts are the popular variety in this part of Nagaland, I believe. So you could certainly try that out too when you're here. And somewhere I was reading up, like you mentioned, right? There's a lot of streams and everything in this part of the state, and especially Zuleki, right? You see a lot of these fisheries and farming for rain trout and stuff like that set up. Even the name itself, Zuleki, I believe it means like underground water or a land of underground water or like that. So it's popular for a lot of fishing and stuff like that. So a little bit different in terms of experience that you could try out here. So yeah, something to consider while you're in Zuleki. And from Zuleki, where do you move on to next, Prasenjit?
so then we go to a village called Poilwa, and then this is again, as I said, in a different belt. So you get to see the Zailing tribe. You can go for nature walks, so you can go and try and spot some birds, and can learn about local plants which are used by the farm villagers. The next village that we'll be going to is Poila, and then we go to a village called Benru. So from Benru, you can do this hike. Either you can, since you have been trekking for like 5-6 days every day, so then you can take a break. Either you can choose to relax in a village called Benru, or you can challenge yourself and go and climb the third highest mountain in Nagaland, which is Mount Pona. So here you can take a break from the hiking, and you can just relax for the day, or you can challenge yourself and climb a mountain. Some people, if they want to, then they can we can arrange transportation for them to go and see Kohima also, which is just an extra like optional activity, because Dimapur and Kohima are like the big cities in Nagaland. So we give them an option that we can arrange a local taxi, and then they can go and see Kohima as such.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. And yeah, like you mentioned, Benru does have a couple of additional things you can do besides the daily treks and hikes and nature walks that you're doing. You do have an option or opportunity to hike up Mount Pona. What is it, like a 3-4 hour hike, you would say, Prasenjit? Like, is it doable for somebody with regular fitness?
With I mean medium fitness, it'll take you about 3 to 4 hours one way.
Okay.
So it will take you about 6 to 7 hours to do the whole trip.
Okay, so almost like a day activity it becomes, right? And remember, in
Yes.
the northeast, it's also the days start fairly early, and I think evenings also by 5:30 it's sunset, it's dark.
Yeah, by
So
4:35 it starts turning dark. So
right. So that's something to keep in mind. And for somebody interested, I would also suggest like looking up a little bit more. But Benru has some really interesting backstories and connections to like a lot of these urban legends and stuff like that. There's I think local deity, if I may, called as Miroding. I read that is popular, so you get to hear a lot of stories about that. So if you're visiting there, I'm sure the trip can be very interesting, and talking to locals will also give you a lot of insight into this. But yeah, it's great that we are able to even add hiking to the mix and hike up to the third highest peak in Nagaland as a part of your stay in Benru. And this is one of the final stops, you would say?
Yeah, so this is the last stop, like the last village you'll be visiting before you're getting dropped back in Dimapur. So so some people catch the flight straight out in the afternoon or evening from Dimapur. Otherwise, we help people arrange accommodation if they have connection the next day. But in these 8 days, you're basically covering quite a few villages, and you get to see two different tribes on this Nagaland on foot.
Yeah, for sure. And a very different experience of sorts, also, right? Like you said, truly an experiential tour or trip, you could say.
As I said, that you may feel that for 7 or 8 days I'll just be seeing villages, but each village is different. The setting of the village, the history of the place, the arts and the craft that you get to see, the people that you interact with. Each village is different. We actually don't even disclose the itinerary. This is the first time we've been actually releasing the itinerary publicly. It's a very beautiful experience. The landscape that you see, the people that you meet, that makes this trip special. And what we do is during the Hornbill Festival time, we include the Hornbill Festival as well as the Zuko Valley trek in this. So we cut the village part a bit short, and like for the first 5-6 days, you'll be doing the village walk, and then after that, you visit the Hornbill Festival, and then you go and do the Zuko Valley trek. So we actually combine three different things.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. And yeah, for somebody who is looking to mix up, like I said, the flagship Hornbill Festival as a part of this itinerary as well, you do have that option to mix and match, where you're still doing the more rural circuit through the village walks, and then you're doing off the Hornbill Festival, where it's a more organized festival where you see a lot of these major tribes, the 16 major tribes of the state, come together, and they have these like model villages and their traditional dance forms, singing, a lot of things to enjoy. So you could cover that off too. That way you're doing multiple types of things in a single itinerary. And obviously the Zuko Valley trek is also very, very popular in the region, covering off these rolling hills in the valley. So yeah, overall there's something for every type of tourist or traveler, and it's great that 6 Degree Adventures is making this possible. Now, for people who are interested to know more and learn more about you or the trip, what's the best way to find out about this, Prasenjit?
We are on Instagram, and we're also on Facebook. So if you just search for 6 Degree Adventures, you can message me directly. So just to let the listeners know that the Hornbill Festival takes place every year from the 1st to the 10th of December. But the Nagaland on Foot tour that we organize from September onwards. So September is a very good time because everything is very green. So it's just after the monsoon. So you get to see a lot of greenery, and the paddy fields are green, the forest is green. So it's stunning at that time. And then closer to winters, things start turning like dryish and a little bit brown, but again it's very beautiful. So you from September to March, we run these tours every month. We do custom tours also, so if someone wants to have the tours according to their dates and the number of people, we do that. Otherwise, we do fixed departure groups as well.
Okay, brilliant, and thank you for letting us know. Yeah, Nagaland certainly is a cultural melting pot, and somebody who actually wants to experience the true way of life of the tribes there, and the what goes on in the villages, because a lot of them are also very cut off and away from, let's say, modern city living, right? So to really have an experience of that way of life of the local tribes there, and how they're also coping with both maintaining their traditional culture and heritage and integrating with the modern society. I think it's a great way to sample some of their lives and take part in this walking tour of Nagaland. So thank you so much for covering off this wonderful state and how life is in the different villages of Nagaland, Prasenjit. And again, thank you again for being back on the Musafir Stories and sharing such a wonderful experience with our listeners. Hopefully, we could again partner in the future and cover off one of your other types of tours. You mentioned that you do a variety of different tours within 6 Degree Adventures as well. We'll certainly look forward to partner with you and cover off some of your other experiences too. But thank you so much for coming back and sharing this wonderful experience.
Thank you, Sept, for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you again. And I hope to see people from all across India and the world actually coming to the Northeast. We look forward to hosting people from all across the country.
Absolutely. Thank you, Prasenjit. That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.